he was charming. He was charming. He wasn't gruff. He wasn't overbearing. He had like a childlike voice. I believe I described it as like Mike Tyson going through puberty. Right.
That's right.
Is the way this guy sounds. Right.
Yeah.
And he had a gentle demeanor, but every now and then flashes of the demon would come out.
Heroes Behind Headlines with Ralph Pizzullo.
Welcome to Heroes Behind Headlines. I'm your host, Ralph Pizzullo. Our main guest today is Frederick Reynolds, former head of detectives of the Compton Police Department, turned award-winning author. Fred is here today to tell us the story behind his new tour de force nonfiction book called Saint Bloodbath, based on a series of brutal murders that took place in a homeless encampment in Southern California in 2008. Joining Fred today are two of the detectives, Detective Mark McGuire and Captain Martin Rodriguez, who played key roles in solving the unusual and complicated case that involved members of the Nuthood Watts drug gang, multiple police jurisdictions, and a single hand discovered by a woman riding her horse in the desert 100 miles away. They're here today to shed light on the diverse victims, the unhoused culture they lived in, and the year-long investigation that led them to one of the most frightening criminals any of them had ever met. It's a great pleasure to welcome Frederick Reynolds, Detective Mark McGuire, and Captain Marty Rodriguez as today's Heroes Behind the Headlines. Gentlemen, thank you all for doing this. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Okay. Hi, good morning. Martin Rodriguez. I was working with Fred Reynolds when he first came to Homicide. Partners for probably over a year. And he included me in this recent work that he produced. At the time, I had about 14 years at Homicide. I've got, I just had coming up on my anniversary, 40 years at the Sheriff's Department. I work for Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and I'm currently a captain on the department. But I worked with Fred, and then in the book, my partner at the time was Bobby Gray, or G. Ray.
Okay. G. Ray. Okay.
Good morning. Mark McGuire, retired Long Beach homicide detective. I was there for 25 years. Retired in 2015. I've known Fred Reynolds since 96, I believe. I met him when I was working the gang unit for Long Beach PD. I'm also a retired musician, former drummer and writer-producer for the late, great Barry White.
Wow.
I did that before becoming a police officer and then eventually becoming a homicide detective. I worked homicide for 15 years, the last 15 years of my career, and caught this case in November of 2008.
So you must be the only person on the planet who's gone from being a drummer for Barry White to being a homicide detective.
That he is.
Right. How did that happen?
Briefly, when I was coming up, my dad, rest in peace, there are 6, well, now there's 5 McGuire brothers. There's one passed last year. But he raised us to always take care of business and have a fallback if what you're currently doing is not working out for you. So when I was a youngster, a young man, I was playing music, traveling the world, doing gigs, and I had a family. So I needed a gig with a job with benefits for the family and a future. So I'd always wanted to be a police officer at some point in my young life. And when I had made a plan that when I turn 30, if I'm not financially secure, I'm out. I'm going to try to be a cop. And that's what I did.
Fantastic. Now, Fred, great to see you again. The book, let me hold up the book. I recommend everybody buy this book. Fantastic. Fred, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a retired deputy sheriff. I worked homicide for about 5 or 6 years until the end of my career. I worked with Marty, homicide. You're assigned with a more tenured investigator, and we teasingly we call that tenured person our daddy, right? And we're their kids. So Marty was my daddy when I got to homicide. He broke me in to the way that the sheriff's department investigates homicides, the protocols and the policies and procedures regarding the sheriff's department's way of investigating murders. I was a Compton police officer before I became a deputy sheriff, and I worked a homicide there. I was actually the supervisor of the homicide unit there, but I still had to learn when I got to homicide. And Marty was a good teacher, and I learned a lot from him. Mark McGuire, probably one of my oldest friends. We met way back in the 90s. It sounds funny now, but we met way back in the 90s over a case where we had mutual gang members that were, doing dirt in the cities of Long Beach and Compton. And we came together working a case. And because of these gang members were terrorizing both cities. He's one of my closest friends. We go on family vacations together. As a matter of fact, last night he was at my house eating my hot dogs. I only had 3 left, and he ate all 3 of them. So, I love both of these guys. And of course, you know the relationship that we have, Ralph. If it wasn't for you, I can honestly say that I wouldn't be a writer.
It was dubbed the Homeless Massacre by the press. On the morning of November 2nd, 2008, 5 bodies were discovered in a homeless encampment near a 405 freeway on-ramp near Long Beach, California. The victims were Catherine Cat Verdun, a 24-year-old still attractive drug user who made her living turning tricks. Lorenzo Villacana, 44, a small-time drug dealer and gangbanger most of his life. His attractive Pacific Islander girlfriend, Vanessa Malepule, who was a decade younger and known for her charming smile. Hamid Saifrat, 41, known as Sammy, a gaunt, mild-mannered Middle Eastern man, and Frederick Neumeier, 53, a white man of German descent who looked like he could have once been a doctor or lawyer, but suffered from alcoholism and diabetes and walked with a cane. All had fallen on hard times and were abusers of alcohol and drugs, and all had been shot in the head at close range.
Fred, what attracted you to this case in particular?
Oh, this case, there was so much involved in this case that touched me, right?
Yeah.
The investigators, McGuire, he's, like I said, he's one of my oldest friends. Marty, I worked with him on the sheriff's department. I consider him a friend as well. And, not only a friend, but a mentor. His partner at the time was Robert Gray, or the infamous G Ray, as we call him. I worked with him when we were in the gang unit, and I worked with him at the sheriff's department in the homicide unit. Mark's partner at the time, Hugo Cortez, I worked with him. I knew every investigator involved in this case intimately as it relates to professional relationships. So I knew how they worked, and I knew the quality of the investigations that they conducted. These 5 people that were murdered in Long Beach, these 5 unfortunate homeless people, they were murdered at an encampment less than a half a mile from where I lived at the time. I heard the shots. Of course, I didn't know, shots are kind of frequent in Southern California, so I didn't know what they were connected to. But some of the victims, I knew some of the victims. One of the victims was an informant for my gang team at the time. I worked in Carson, which was probably 3 miles away from where the murders happened at. One of the female victims, I knew her family. Her family was big in Carson. We all knew the family. Several of the other victims, well, at least 2 of the other victims, I knew because I would see them panhandling on the freeway when I was going to work. There was a restaurant about 2 blocks from where they were murdered called Fantastic Burger. I bought my family food there, and I would see them begging for food around the restaurant. And oftentimes I bought them food, and sometimes I gave them money. So I had an intimate connection with this case on all angles. And the victims were I mean, they were a melting pot of ethnicities, which is what Los Angeles County is known for.
Yeah.
And in this case, we had everything. I had there was a German victim, there was a French victim, there was, a white. I mean, there was all manner of people involved, and even with the investigators themselves, they were from such a diversified background.
Yeah.
That I felt this case needed to be told. And, I told Mark about it, and he agreed to help me with it. And I got in contact with Marty, and Marty gave me whatever information I needed in regard to research, and I was able to get it done.
Fantastic. You're absolutely right. It certainly does. I mean, the characters are so rich and so interesting and so diverse, right?
Yes.
And the circumstances by which all these people sort of ended up in this encampment are, fascinating. It's sort of like the story of LA County right now with our homeless problem. Okay, Mark, could you kind of set the scene for, when you were called, when you got the call, what did you find?
It was actually my birthday week. My birthday is November 4th. And I was on call. Me and Hugo were on call. And usually we caught anywhere from 1 to 3 cases per call out. Just Hugo and I. I guess that's just the way it was. It was usually 2, minimum 2.
Yeah. Murder cases or just...
murder, kidnap, or an officer involved shooting. That's what we handled. And in the city of Long Beach, it was usually murder, usually gang related murder. Most of our murders were gang related. So this particular time of the year, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, it was my birthday weekend, but that didn't mean anything because I was on call. So usually when I'm on call, I don't plan anything. I just sit around and wait, and then clean up whatever I need to clean up case wise. So I get the call the morning of November 1st, and it was the day after after Halloween, obviously.
Yeah.
And I respond first, and I call Hugo, wake him up after I get the information. But when the dispatcher called me, they told me it was 5 bodies on the side of the freeway. And I call Hugo, we roll out. I get there first, and the bigwigs are already there. The command post is already set up on the freeway. They're right in the middle of the crime scene that I find out later. And then I go to work. Once Hugo gets there, we go to work, setting up the perimeter, trying to figure out how it happened, where it happened, if there's any other crime scenes related to the primary crime scene, and there was, which is why they, I made a move the command post from in the middle of my crime scene down to the street. It was the first time I'd had more than a double, I believe. I've had double homicide, but never a quintuple. So to me, it was just like working 5 different murder cases in one crime scene, and that's the way we processed it. And it took us a couple days to process all of the property that was in there, because although it was a homeless or unhoused camp, these folks had all their property and whatnot in there. So collecting the property, collecting the evidence, identifying the evidence to see if what we could use to, try and identify a suspect and eventually catch them. So it was meticulous. It was a coroner call out instead of, they brought the mass casualty unit out there instead of collecting all the bodies individually and taking them to the coroner's office. It was actually the greatest use of all my skills as an investigator, as a person who dealt with property, who dealt with victims and witnesses. I had to use every skill set that I had in my tool bag to pull this case together and to start investigating it as well.
And the crime scene was right on the freeway? Oh, it was an encampment. It sounds like it was kind of split. There were 2 encampments, correct?
There were 2, yes, sir. The main campsite where the murder occurred was actually on the side of the freeway. So as you exit the southbound 405 at Santa Fe on the embankment, their campsite abutted up against the Collier building. It was a manufacturer there. So
that building. Yeah.
they tied their tents up against the fence line, and then it went north into the side of the hill, or into their camp, which is where they had three tents set up in there, or three campsites set up in there, all sectioned off. On the other side of the freeway was without giving away the story.
Yeah.
Was another campsite, and within the story, it will reveal that second or first campsite. So, there were two. I knew there were two. Like Fred said, and Marty, I worked gangs before I worked homicide. So I'd worked the whole city. I'd worked patrol, a graveyard. So I knew the city like the back of my hand. And before I became a cop, and while I was working for Barry, I was a Simmons Cable TV supervisor, installer, and supervisor and technician. So I knew the city probably better than most cops, and I knew the area. All those skill sets helped me with this case.
The dilemma of the homeless or the unhoused is enormous and growing in Southern California. The latest at-point-in-time tally of people experiencing homelessness in LA County in 2023 is a whopping 75,518 people, compared to 69,144 a year ago. That shows a 9% increase in LA County and a 10% increase in the city of LA from 2022. Recently, the LA County Board of Supervisors approved a $532.6 million homeless initiative spending plan for fiscal year 2022 to 2023 that significantly expands permanent and interim housing solutions and increases funding for local cities. Statewide, California has spent a stunning $17.5 billion trying to combat homelessness over the past 4 years. During that same time frame, from 2018 to 2022, the state's homeless population has grown. Today, according to federal data, half of all Americans living on the streets, or 170,000 people, are in California. And every year, California adds more unhoused people than any other state in the country.
Could you spend a minute and describe the victims?
The victim that probably caused the demise of everyone else, his name was Lorenzo Villacana. They called him LV. He was a member of a Carson street gang, and he had fallen out of favor because he was a cooperator with law enforcement on occasion. And his girlfriend, her name was Vanessa Malapule. She was a Pacific Islander, a member of our family in the Carson area. And then we had another victim by the name of Hamad Shrafat. They called him Sammy. There was a victim by the name of Catherine Verdun. And then the last victim's name was Frederick. They called him White Fred, right? He was a German gentleman. Catherine was French. Like I said, Vanessa was Pacific Islander. LV was a Mexican gentleman. So what happened was all of the victims have been shot multiple times. The majority of the gunshots they received were to the face and head areas.
Yeah.
And as Mark investigated the case, he would come to find out that the locations of the shots were part of the killer's MO. The guy believed in shooting people in the head because he didn't want to leave anybody alive to witness against him in the future.
Yeah.
There was a sixth victim. I'll get into that victim after Marty talks about how he got involved in the case.
Okay. I want to take a minute and just read the opening so people get a sense of the language and how vivid the language is here. Kevin Sullivan's hands were slippery with his own blood. They clutched at his throat as he gasped for air. listening to the screams all around him while he lay on the concrete driveway of a house in a gang-infested area of Carson, California. Voices mixed in with the screams, some of them calling his name and telling him to hold on, others saying that help was on the way, most of them begging God to spare his life. Silence and darkness quickly descended, and Sullivan accepted the inevitable as gravity took control of his hands and they fell away, allowing the blood to flow without obstruction. Some great stuff there, Fred. Beautiful description.
Thanks, Ralph.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so Mark, how do you start an investigation like this? You've got 5 bodies in a homeless encampment. Where do you start?
Securing the crime scene is probably the first thing that I did, or that we did. And once we secured the crime scene more efficiently than what was initially done, I try to identify how the crooks got in, how they got out, what evidence is visible to me at that point that I could use to identify the suspect. And in this case, it would have been footprints.
Yeah.
But however, because the Chippies, CHP, found the victims first, they had brought numerous other partners through there to look at the dead bodies.
Yeah.
So the shoe print angle was gone. And not to mention my department, they did the same thing. Everybody wanted to see the crime scene. So we try to find evidence that I can use to identify a suspect or lead me to a suspect. Try to figure out what the motive was, anything that I could use at that time. And in that day and age, even in 2008, video camera footage was important. Of course, there was none in that area that I could use at the time. Just trying to gather witnesses in the area that might have heard what went down. Any eyewitnesses in the area that might have heard what went down. Like Fred said, there was the hamburger spot not too far away. And that particular area where the unhoused lived and hung out and pandered, I was looking for other witnesses as well. So that's it. Just trying to gather some evidence, trying to figure out who was who. This particular case, Sammy was a victim of mine on another case years prior to that. So I actually recognized him once I saw his face.
Yeah.
So I had that in the back of my mind as, well, maybe they got him this time. They didn't get him the last time.
Right. So maybe they were connected.
Going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just trying to figure out a way to start looking for the suspects. And to do that, you got to do the crime scene. You have to process the crime scene.
Right.
Everything in the crime scene. There were cell phones laying about, so we're looking for fingerprint evidence. We're looking for ballistic evidence. We're looking for forensic evidence, DNA, that kind of stuff. What can I test? What can I send to the lab? Yeah. All that's going on in my mind as a checklist to process this crime scene to identify a suspect.
And as you start canvassing the neighborhood, what do you start to hear in terms of what people heard or saw, or what they knew about these 5 victims? And also, as investigator, what is the level of suspicion from or reluctance to talk to you from people in a case like this?
The level of cooperation, particularly in this case, because the streets talk. So I believe that the streets knew what went down. Across the street from the crime scene is a housing area. So I didn't get any cooperation, or I shouldn't say cooperation. Nobody really saw anything. A lot of people heard the gunshots because there were multiple gunshots. There was a bunch of gunshots. They heard the gunshots, but nobody saw anything. It wasn't until later when we got into the case that we realized we had more witnesses than we thought. There's several ways to put a case together, and it all helps out eventually getting that information when you interview your suspect. But in this case, all we had was multiple gunshots. We had no eyewitnesses. We didn't really have anything to go on. but the neighbors knew about the homeless or the unhoused people living in the area.
Mhm.
They knew that they lived somewhere back there, but they didn't know where.
Yeah.
So it was difficult trying to find any witnesses at all that could lead us immediately to a suspect.
Fred, could you talk a little bit about what was the situation in LA County in 2008 in terms of the level of crime?
Like the youngsters say, it was off the hook. It was, the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
And it had been that way, for decades, since the 80s, through the 90s, through the 2000s, and all the way up until 2008. The gang violence was really bad, and the drug usage, was part of it.
Yeah.
They came hand in hand. And then you throw in the homeless situation, and you got an unholy trinity.
Yeah.
Which is how everything, came together and clashed, because Mark and his partner, they had to investigate all of those angles. Most of the victims used drugs. Some of the victims, well, at least one of the victims had to sell her body to survive, right? Two other victims were alcoholics. So these victims were all outcasts of society.
Yeah.
And, they did what they had to do to survive daily. And, when I started writing this book, I knew that was one of the things that I wanted to ensure the readers understood, that no matter how these victims lived, they were human.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I wanted the reader to understand that. I wanted the reader to walk in their shoes. I didn't want to just present these 5 victims, homeless victims. All of a sudden they're dead. Right.
Yeah.
Now the hunt for the suspect is on.
Yeah.
I wanted people to understand what these people went through. I wanted people to empathize with their plight. And, they lived in an area that was besieged by gang violence.
Yeah.
This particular area of Long Beach, it was close to Carson. And Carson, I was the supervisor of the gang unit in Carson at the time. We had a lot of gangs in Carson, right? Then if you go just north of Carson, then you have Compton.
Yeah.
And Compton, I don't even have to talk about, Compton, its reputation precedes itself.
Yeah.
So, most of the people that frequented the Compton, the Carson and Long Beach areas, they had connections to Compton. So the gang violence was out of control. There were hundreds of gang-related murders every year. But usually homeless people, or the unhoused, I guess is a more proper term these days, the unhoused were rarely victims of murder.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why the city of Long Beach was, they were in uproar. They were terrified. They thought a serial killer was running around the city, killing homeless people, for God's sake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was there was a real popular season of the show The Wire, which is one of my favorite television series. The 5th season was about, a serial killer killing homeless people, although it was made up.
Yeah.
But, you have all that going on at the time these poor people were murdered, and the city of Long Beach, they had a big homeless problem at the time.
Yeah.
And they didn't know whether the unhoused were just going to be, all of a sudden just, be getting murdered, daily or weekly or whatever. So there was some apprehension about the serial killer aspect. But Mark, to his credit, he pretty much knew right away that it wasn't a serial killer. He knew that it was some street stuff, or some street shit, as we call it, right? But the administrators in the police department and the city officials, of course, they never listened to the investigator, the people who know the most about something.
Yeah.
They never listen to us, right? Because they know everything. And, they disregarded what Mark told them. And, they wanted to run with this serial killer because it was sexy, right? For the news, right? It's a sexy headline.
The nature of the murder is the guy having shot people in the head kind of lends itself to that
so many
theory.
at one time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they didn't want the simple narrative of street shit, right?
Right.
They wanted this super story, this glamorous story of, homeless people target a mad serial killer.
Right.
That just wasn't the case.
That lends itself to the press as well.
Correct.
So, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. None of these victims had like serious criminal records. I mean, they weren't like active criminals. They had done things and the drug use and so on and so forth, but none of them were like had done serious time for big crimes, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Most of them were just victim to their addiction, drugs and alcohol, and that's one of the main reasons they were living on the streets, with the exception of maybe the main victim, Viacana.
Yeah.
He was living on the streets because he was hiding out from his debts, and he was slinging. He was a gangster and he was slinging dope. So
okay, he was really different from the other four.
Yes, the other four were living there out of just the way their lives, the turn their lives took at the time.
Right. And so how did the investigation progress? When were you able to establish that LV was probably like the chief victim in this situation?
Very early on in the investigation. I don't want to give away the book.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
But very early on in the investigation, he was my motive, if you will.
Right.
We believe that he was the motive for these murders, or the target.
Yeah, the target
for the murder.
Yeah.
And it took a while to pull all that together again without giving up the beautiful story Fred wrote and the way he captured it in the book. Yeah, it was very early on. And so it was just a matter of proving that, putting it all together, proving it, and then investigating all the other angles that were thrown at us. The serial killer angle that Fred mentioned and you mentioned was huge because, like he said, the administrators jumped on that, the press jumped on that. I mean, I had international agencies calling me from as far as Europe and London and France, and trying to see if we had a serial killer out there targeting the homeless at the time. I knew early on, I believed early on that wasn't the case. It was what it turned out to be. And I kept that at the forefront of the investigation. And then we had to investigate all the other angles to rule them out, because you never know. And there were so many different angles that we had, but it took a little bit, but eventually it worked out.
And increasingly people came forward with information. And it sounds like a lot of it had to do with sort of sorting through people's stories and figuring out like what part of what they were telling you was true and what part were they kind of covering up to keep themselves clean, so to speak.
Absolutely. Because of the nature of the witnesses that were involved, the unhoused folks, and we knew that a lot of them were terrified on the streets. We had to be very careful with how we handled information, and the information that they were giving us we could corroborate it. And we knew that they all talked to each other, and we knew that they were sharing information. And that's one of the beauties of being the investigator on the inside of a case, is that you know what's what and what's not. And even with all the information that was coming in, 90% of it was the same. And we knew that they were sharing information, or we believed that quite a few people had went to the campsite prior to the police showing up and saw the crime scene, right?
Right. Because they heard it and they rushed over there. Yeah.
So they used that to their advantage to get fed, to get housing. We took care of people. We definitely take care of witnesses that take care of us, meaning we knew they were hungry. We knew they needed things, the necessities of life. And we took care of that. I mean, nobody else was doing it.
Yeah.
And eventually we were able to put things together. Even Marty's portion of the case, was huge because it was kind of like, as bad as this is going to sound, the icing on the cake for who we believe did it.
Yeah.
And once Marty's case revealed itself to us, then it solidified, who our suspect was.
Yeah, because you had kind of come to a somewhat of a standstill there with your investigation, and then this other aspect developed.
Yeah, it actually came after a little bit of a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
But when his case revealed itself to us, that was the icing. We knew then that now all we have to do is just put it together.
Yeah. There's a great passage here. Fred, you recreated these exchanges between the detectives. I thought, that was beautiful, really effective. There's one great passage here where you guys talk, the two investigators talk about the war on drugs, and particularly George Bush, the old man. And it says, "Fuck that asshole, Hugo. He made an enemy out of entire inner cities across the country, which was where the biggest drug problems were. And if you think about it, he didn't really do shit until his wife got pissed. She was appalled at what was going on in her great nation, when all she had to do was look at the motherfucker sleeping next to her to find the root cause of the devastation. It's always the wives, huh, amigo? Then Nancy Reagan got on TV and said, just say no to drugs, like it was that easy to do for those people in the ghettos. Next thing you know, her husband authorizes local PDs to deploy armored vehicles. They called them battering rams, but you and I both know they were just tanks without guns. They had to be some scary shit for kids to see rolling past their schools and playgrounds. We got all these presidents declaring war on the wrong enemies, when they should have declared it on the people bringing the bullshit into our country. And that would have meant following the money. And we know where that would have led. See, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's great, Fred. That kind of sums up the bigger picture. Yeah,
it really does. And, I was able to recreate conversations like that or create conversations like that because, like I said, I knew all of the investigators and I still know the investigators intimately. I've shared these same discussions with them. And, there's a lot that goes into investigating a case. And obviously, if you're writing together, you're not talking about the case 24/7. Right. There's other conversations that go on.
Right.
And cops get frustrated at the politics and the social ramifications that go on as well. Yeah. We don't always agree with everything that happens. We don't always agree with the things that our politicians are doing. And sometimes we get frustrated and it comes to light during conversations in a patrol car, particularly when you are on the sheriff's department. The LA County Sheriff's Department investigates homicides over a huge range of area. Okay.
Yeah.
Like this case was interesting because the 5 unhoused people that were murdered were, murdered near a beach, right? Mm-hmm. Marty's case happened in a desert, almost 100 miles away.
Yeah,
and that was another exciting aspect of this story that I love retelling because of the interjurisdictional cooperation that had to be conducted to bring these cases home. Marty and his partner, they had these long drives up to Lancaster, and there was room for a lot of discussion.
I'm sure.
I've had some of the same discussions with Marty, and I've had some of the same discussions with Bobby Gray. I know what goes on in a car between investigators when you're in the car for 2 hours going to investigate a murder. So, Marty, I think we can segue into Marty's case. I don't want to give up too much about how the two cases came to be connected, right? Because that would be giving up a big part of the story.
Okay.
But and Marty can talk about, his long trips up to Lancaster, which as a former sheriff's homicide, that's one of the places we hate to go to, Lancaster, okay? Because, it's just a different world up there, so.
Okay.
just to throw in one comment, it makes sense because you guys are investigators, right? So
Right.
it makes sense that you would try to analyze and figure out, like during your not free time, but just naturally, how these problems that you have to deal with on the street, like where they come from, right?
Right.
What the
Right.
root
I mean,
causes are. Yeah.
Yeah, the media they like to portray cops as knuckle draggers, right?
Right.
But there's some really, really bright cops,
Sure.
with a lot of introspective
Absolutely.
and a lot of erudite conversations. So yeah, these men that work these particular cases, very smart men,
Sure.
very smart men,
Have to be.
and great investigators. So
Right. So it's natural that you're analyzing the bigger problem as well. Like, okay, we see the results. We see this happening on the street. Why?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? Right.
Yeah, and there's another conversation that I I created in the book about where Marty and one of his partners, they're talking about existentialism, right? And as it relates to police work, it's kind of like, we've seen babies get murdered while they're sleeping in their cribs from a stray round, right?
Yeah.
And we've also seen some of the worst people that ever walked the earth get shot 5, 6 different occasions and survive.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of questions like, why this person?
Right.
Why did the baby die? But this piece of shit just keeps to keep living and gets to keep hurting people. These are conversations that we have because we see all these type of cases.
Of course. Okay. Marty, thanks for your patience. Can you talk about how you became connected to this case?
First of all, like as Fred was saying, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau, it's very unique in the way that it handles cases because we're centralized, but we're responsible for murder investigations in the vast area of Los Angeles County. So all
huge.
Departments' areas of responsibility, as well as law enforcement agencies that request our assistance. And then I also worked multiple units, centralized units like narcotics, gangs, major crimes that takes you throughout the far reaches of the county. So I became familiar with the Antelope Valley area where Lancaster and Palmdale are located. Never liked it, as Fred said, because it's a long drive.
It is a long drive, yeah.
But my best cases, if you will, are always, as I reminisce, are centered around there because it's a vast area, but a small town. I had a person, there was a nexus to 5 murders that I handled. She was involved as one, she was the victim's girlfriend. On 2 others, she was a peripheral witness, and just kept running into her, and it was crazy like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Going back to this case, so a year later, in September of 2009, Bobby and I get a call about a severed hand that's been recovered by a woman who was horseback riding, and her dog brought a severed hand to her.
Lancaster, California is a city of approximately 170,000 people at the northern edge of Los Angeles County in Southern California's Mojave Desert. Located approximately 70 miles from downtown LA in what is known as the Antelope Valley, winters there are generally cool to mild and summers are hot and nearly rainless with average high temperatures in the high 90s. Today, Lancaster is home to major defense contractors such as Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems, and government agencies such as NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center. Law enforcement in Lancaster is provided by contract with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, of which Captain Marty Rodriguez is a member.
The area was about 20 miles east of Lancaster, near the Challenger Middle School. To set that scene, it's a desert-scape you have the school, and then surrounding the school is brush, sand, dirt, and desert.
Wow.
So it takes, with traffic, it takes, at least an hour and a half, if not more, to get out there. So we get it in the middle of the week, as I remember. And by the time we get out there, sure enough, we got a hand on the dirt road.
Yeah.
A distraught woman we get a brief statement from her. With the limited daylight that we have, we try to do a circumference search of about a perimeter of about a mile. And then darkness falls, and we're done for the night. But the news media gets a hold of it, the information regarding the severed hand, and they go out in the daytime the following day, and they're reporting, they're doing a stand-up, a remote stand-up out there on the circumstances. And kids from the middle school see this, find out about this hand, and they go running off into the desert, farther than the mile circumference that we checked, and lo and behold, they come upon a ravaged, remains of the sixth victim. The case begins, our portion of it, and I mean, this is at least 80 miles away from Long Beach, so I'm not thinking it's related to Mark's, and this is not unusual for the coming across bodies in the desert. I had one on September 11th. I remember it because it was 9/11, and it was a missing person, and ultimately it turned out to be another taken out to the desert and murdered guy. So we had to wait for an anthropologic excavation of the remains, because very tedious, digging dirt around the body and searching for evidence. So it took a few days to process the scene, if you will.
And this was another unusual victim. Can you describe him a little bit?
Right. Part of your investigation is to do a victimology once you identify him. So we took several days. We had to go through the autopsy process to finally identify him. And when we did, it turned out to be a missing person. But this poor kid was, he was a white kid, but he went through foster homes. And so some of the parents that fostered him were African American. So he gravitated toward that culture as far as street life, and fancied himself as kind of an African American gang member. He attached himself to one of the gangs up there. And so, but he was taken in, and then because of his appearance, he had really, and from his photos, they were really good looking eyes. I mean, so they call them cat eyes. He had really blue piercing eyes. And so then we, looked into the missing persons report, and unfortunately, as will in big departments and things fall through the cracks, that case wasn't investigated very well. There was a lot of issues with it. We worked several months on this case, and every time you have to drive up that Trek 13, which in Fred's book obviously gives the opportunity for the banter to occur.
Which is great.
I mean, it's all endearment, because if you don't like the person you're with, because you spend more time with that part than your own family.
Right. So those relationships get really close, I'm sure.
If you're going to work a case, with Bobby and I, we had a lot of luck, and we're successful in solving a lot of cases. But because we enjoyed spending the time working them, and we didn't like being around each other. And although it's very sardonic and sarcastic, our banter, we really liked each other. So
Well, that comes through in the book, definitely.
That's been with most of my partners. I haven't had. I've been fortunate not to have partners, but I have had partners where you could hardly wait for the day to end.
That must be rough, man. That must be rough. Yeah.
And I feel bad because man, we could do so much more, but I
Right.
got to get out of this.
Right. I don't want to be around this guy anymore. Yeah. Cat
In case-
Eyes comes across as very like a real tragic victim because he was just this, kid. He didn't seem like such a bad guy, but he just got, man, just a, as you say, Fred, when you look at it in terms of an existential view, I mean, this kid just got a raw deal all the way through his life.
All the way through, Ralph. It was, there's a lot of problems with the foster care system and the Department of Children's Services. And this kid was, he just got the raw deal in life, and I have a lot of empathy for kids that are products of foster care homes. My wife and I adopted a child that was on the way to foster care if we hadn't stepped in. So, I know the system, right? Because I had to go to court during the while I was trying to get custody of this kid. So I know what these kids go through. And, this kid was seeking an identity, just like Marty said. He got, fostered by African-American family, and, he's hanging out with these gang members. He wasn't fortunate enough to be introduced to, I might get some heat behind this, but he wasn't fortunate enough to be introduced into, I guess I can say, quality people. Okay. He was introduced to these people that, want to be gang members and participate in drive-by shootings and sell drugs and kidnap people and rape and rob, because that's what they do. Okay.
No, he was thrown in the ocean
real right now.
Yeah, he was thrown in the ocean with the sharks, and he had to learn how to swim. There's this perception now that the gang members are cool, and they're just like a product, just a good product of our society. They're not. They're criminals, and they like doing bad things to people and hurting people. He got involved in that kind of a situation, and he was actually a member of one of the larger African American street gangs in LA County. Right, a white kid, right? So, the way he ended up was just as tragic, if not more so, than the 5 people that were murdered in Long Beach. Right.
Because as you read the story, you'll get to walk in his shoes that last mile of his life.
Oh yeah,
and you'll get to experience, probably what was going through his mind just before his life was ended.
Right.
And it was horrible. That was one of the parts. If I read that part now, it kind of touches me, because I can understand the fear that this kid had to be feeling just before he was brutally murdered.
All right, without giving things away here, I want to talk about David Ponce. Because what a character, man. Almost like the personification of evil. Clearly had a ongoing relationship with the devil there for a while. Marty, can you talk about him a little bit and his unusual girlfriend? Because, I mean, how do you figure that, right? I mean, she sounded like a really, cool woman, right? Who had it together. Yeah.
This is really crazy because so we get the call from Mark, and that every homicide detective, man, you're waiting for that call.
Yeah.
So we get the call from Mark and Hugo that, hey, we might know who did your case up there, and so we're all jazzed about it. And then he tells us, what's going on with the suspect's girlfriend and stuff. So obviously we make arrangements for the 4 of us to go out there and meet with her. So she's in Lancaster. We get out there and she's what I like to refer to as a unicorn.
Yeah.
She's attractive, smart, got her shit together.
Wow.
And she's in an area where those things don't often factor in.
Yeah.
And then the crazy thing is she was living with this dude, this guy who was man, evil incarnate, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And it just didn't make sense. But as a homicide investigator, you never look a gift horse in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
So we took it and we ran with it, and we talked to her, and we got the whole information, and this ultimately led to what every homicide investigator gets paid for, sitting down with this guy in a interview room.
Yeah.
And it's always been my philosophy. That's what they pay us for. They, a trained monkey can go, do a scene.
Yeah.
They can, look up information. It's all about, relationships, developing relationships.
Right.
And in that interview room, and when I get new people that were breaking in, I always use this. I said, we're salesmen, state prison.
Yeah.
We don't make many sales, but when we close a sale, man, that's a big deal. It's bigger than the timeshare.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we met with David, and man, it was chilling. It was chilling. And by this time, I'm an experienced cop and homicide investigator.
Yeah.
But he was almost charming.
Yeah.
Which tells you a lot, because he's very respectful. It wasn't, he's a hardened ex-con, but did not come across that way. And I don't know if it's the way we approached him or whatever, but we developed a rapport.
Yeah.
And he basically, at least to the Bledsoe murder, he gave a statement and confessed, which is like, that's what I'm saying about, that's a sale I closed. I haven't closed a sale like that in a long time. This was a kidnap, murder. So I knew the ramifications are potentially the death penalty.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm sure, educated in the prison system, he knew that as well. But there was no fuss, no muss. It was a short interview, and that's how it went.
Yeah, I want to read a passage here, just short. And this is him. This is Ponce. And he's with Tatsuo. Is that the way you pronounce her name? His girlfriend?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ponce laughed and turned in her direction. He fixed his eyes on something behind her. "You don't understand," he said. "The demons are here. They're trying to get me. They want me to go with them." "There's nothing there, babe," Tatsu said as she turned to see what he was looking at. "No one else is here. If this is a joke, I need you to stop right now. You're scaring me." And just then he finally looked at her. His eyes were dead, cornea without sparkle, the pupils oval and fixed. He was somewhere in between heaven and hell, a blind man in purgatory. Wow.
Dan, that's some strong writing there, Ralph.
Yeah. What the hell, Fred? I'm turning it all over to you, man.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to actually speak with Tatsuo, and that is not her true name.
Okay. Good.
She was willing to talk to us with, after Mark's introduction of her to me. She was willing to talk to me, and I was able to get this information so that I could write what you just read. Yeah. And like Marty said, she's a very intelligent woman.
Wow.
Very attractive.
Yeah.
And again, like Marty, most people who met her that knew of her association or her connection with David Ponce came away wondering, what the fuck, right? Yeah. Why? You know exactly. What I mean? Why is she with this guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
I mean, he didn't treat her so well either. It's not like he was a great guy with her. Yeah,
he did. And one of the most challenging parts was humanizing him.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can be the worst person in the world.
Right.
But there's a human aspect to you.
Sure.
And even though he treated her bad in the end, he had to have treated her good at some point. Right.
Absolutely. He had to be super charming. Right.
Right. So and like Marty said, he was charming.
Yeah,
he was charming. He wasn't gruff. He wasn't overbearing. He had like a childlike voice. I believe I described it as like Mike Tyson going through puberty. right?
That's right.
Is the way this guy sounds, right?
Yeah.
And you know, he
So there was a gentle kind of demeanor about him in a way.
Yes, he had a gentle demeanor, but every now and then flashes of the demon would come out, right?
Wow.
And you know, during their first date, I made sure to cover that he was charming, but also the demon was just underneath.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
he admitted it. Yeah.
Yeah. So and she told me, Tatsuo told me about the devil incidents, the seemingly possessed incidents, and I'm not going to get into that part.
Yeah.
But you know, all of these things that I wrote about in this book came straight from, I won't say the horse's mouth, I'll say the mare's mouth, because you know, she told me
these were like involuntary episodes. It's not like he summoned the devil. It just sort of came and took him over.
Yeah, I mean, he was he scared the hell out of her.
Yeah.
And you know, it seems I would think, even though we don't have any proof of it, I would think that these manifestations always occurred shortly after he had killed someone. Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. There seems to be, you know, some kind of connection with that, and I don't know. You know, some people believe in devils and demons and angels and heaven and hell. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those that do. I believe in good and evil.
Same
right.
Here. Yep.
And there's a strong indication that there was something going on with this man.
Yeah.
On the evil side.
Yeah.
There's supernatural because the way he was able to dispatch people with not even a second thought.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
After the cat eyes incident, you know, Tatsuo, she told us exactly what he did afterwards, and it's kind of like, you got to be kidding me, right? Yeah. It's a real interesting story.
And that cat eye, and also in the cat eye incident, you know, he didn't just shoot the kid, right? He cut him up.
Right. No, he didn't cut him up.
No,
what happened was he shot him multiple times in the head with a large caliber handgun. So there was no head left.
Yeah.
Like Marty said, the forensic anthropologists, they had to literally put his skull back together. Now, the reason why there were body parts severed and body parts missing is because of animal activity.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Because he's in the desert, and you got these coyotes, and you know, and they ate him up, and then came the carrion birds, and they finished the rest of them. So by the time they found his remains, there was literally nothing but bones attached inside of clothing with shreds of skin. It was horrible. It was a horrible scene.
Yeah. Mark, you know, what a twist from your perspective, right? When you got the call from Lancaster, from Marty, that must have been, like, you know, quite a big surprise to you.
Well, I called Marty and I knew it would get handled. So when I called him, and it's in the book, our conversation's in the book.
Yeah.
But I think I warned him and said, hey, dude is a little different.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I might have said he's pure evil or something like that.
Yeah.
And just to kind of give him a warning, you know, David was probably the most evil person I've dealt with in my career.
It's September 2017. After deliberating for a day, jurors in an LA County courthouse found David Cruz Ponce, 36, and Max Alessio Rafael, 31, guilty on 5 counts of murder for the killing of Lorenzo Villacana, Catherine Verdun, Hamid Sraifat, Frederick Neumeier, and Vanessa Malepule. Ponce was also found guilty of another count of murder and kidnapping of 18-year-old Tony Bledsoe, known as Cat Eyes, and 2 counts of possession of a firearm by a felon. The jury recommended that David Ponce be sentenced to death. Max Rafael was sentenced to 5 consecutive life prison terms without the possibility of parole.
You really got to read the book to figure out how the investigation came together. But it was a beautiful thing, like I said, because all of my experience from law enforcement was used in this case. You know, I had worked gangs. Me and Hugo worked gangs. We worked gangs together. We did hundreds of search warrants, entries and searches. And, you know, one of the things that led us to Lancaster during the course of this investigation was warrant service. And then we found what we found, and I was able to call Marty and go, hey, I got a good idea who your boy is. Here you go.
Yeah.
You know, and then after we got Tatsuo, after we talked with her, then we pretty much knew everything was going to come together. And then it was just a matter of, you know, tying it together and putting the packages together.
Yeah. And what was it like, that first meeting, you know, for you with David, being the guy who first investigated the murders and had seen the victims, when, you know, to sit facing the, you know, the person that you suspect had committed all this carnage? How do you deal with a situation like that? That must be incredibly loaded for you.
I had help. There was a department psychologist, Dr. Christine Cho, and before I did my interview with David, our first interview with David, I went to her to get like a profile of what I should and shouldn't do when I interview this dude.
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys that uses everything in my toolbox. I don't care who you are, what you do. If you can help me with a case, I do what I can to get you to help me with a case.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Dr. Cho had been close since I had met her. And I went to her, we sat down, I told her about the case, I told her about David, and she gave me her opinion of how I should conduct the interview. Me being a man that listens to people that know more than me and can help me, I did exactly what she told me to do. I used the techniques and skill set she gave me, and it worked. He was able to corroborate everything that we had suspected had happened. And on top of that, I had been investigating, listening, following him for years, right? However long it took to solve this case.
Yeah.
So I knew everything about him. And when I went to Dr. Cho, you know, I shared that with her, and that's how she was able to give me the skills or the techniques to get him to give us what we wanted. And I was, you know, it was the biggest interview of my career at that time, probably ever.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to fuck it up.
Sure, of course not.
Right. Like Marty said, you know, we get paid to sit in the box across from the person and try to get that confession. And I was pretty good at getting confessions out of people, but I knew that this dude was different. He was a little different, and I had to use whatever techniques I had to get him to give me what I wanted. Yeah. And I'm talking to you like this because I don't want to give up the.
No. You're doing a great job.
The book. People got to read the book. Or I'd like them to read the book.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. They're going to read the book after they listen to this. Yeah.
So Dr. Cho actually helped me with that. And so when we got in the box with him, we basically played with him to get him to give us what we wanted. And he did.
He did. You were successful.
She was a huge part of that, you know, and I give her props to this day, for helping us.
Well, guys, we won't give away any more. People have to read the book. There's just one other thing, Fred, that I have to bring up, and that is the numbers. And I'm going to read one more passage here. The entirety of the recording, this is the recording with David Ponce, was 3 hours and 16 minutes, or 3:16. The Bible verse about God so loving the world that he sacrificed his one and only son. With Ponce's history of fighting demons, with his mother seemingly casting the devil out of him, with the most terrifying portions of his confessions taking up 66 minutes and 60 seconds, perhaps there is a purpose in so-called angel numbers. Perhaps in them lies an explanation for the unexplained deaths of the innocent, while monsters live among us, seemingly unabated. Coincidences are nebulous things. The more they start to accumulate, however, the less ambiguous they become. Pretty profound, Fred.
the numbers, Ralph, they played such a huge role in this case. And, we started seeing the same numbers over and over and over. And,
Wow.
when you read the book, you'll see the significance of the number 11 or 111, which are called angel numbers. He definitely wasn't an angel.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Wow. Well, gentlemen, fantastic book, Fred, and great work by both Marty and Mark. And you really kind of humanize what it's like, to be in a situation like this, which is pretty confronted with like the worst of human nature, and to extract something beautiful and noble about it, really. And I commend you for that. One last thing. Now, this kind of work has got to take a toll on it's got to be difficult, because you're really like delving into the darkness and then having to come out and deal with your family and project a positive role model like in the world, which all three of you men do remarkably well. Can you talk about that for a minute, Fred?
Yeah, I wanted to cover that part of it in the book, and I do touch on it, how when you're charged with investigating, murders, which is the ultimate crime, it takes a toll on you.
Sure.
Right? Because you end up thinking about these cases even when you aren't at work. You end up thinking about these cases, something will trigger a case, a part of the case, like a name, right? A name of a victim, a name of a witness, right? Or you might think of something that you could do to help solve the case.
Mm-hmm.
The point I'm trying to make is that homicide investigators carry these cases everywhere with them, like luggage.
Yeah.
To this day, Ralph, Marty and I had a case, right?
Mm-hmm.
This poor lady, and it's funny that you bring up Dr. Cho, Mark, because Marty and I had a case where a lady by the last name of Cho was murdered, and we didn't solve it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that one still stings. And, to this day, I think, is there something we could have did a little different? Maybe if we go back on it, if someone goes back on it, maybe there's been an advance in science, in forensic science. Maybe they can find something that wasn't available to us at the time, right?
Yeah.
And Marty, this case happened in 2012?
Yeah.
And I still think about this, Ralph, and I've been retired since 2017.
Yeah.
And every now and then, Miss Cho's case will cross my mind.
Yeah.
So I wanted the reader to understand, the challenges that homicide investigators go through,
Mm-hmm.
How they carry their cases with them, like unpacked luggage. I think I use that in the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just mindless robots without feelings,
Right.
Without families. We have families. We have, loved ones that depend on us. And I wanted to illustrate that in this book as well. That's why I touched on each investigator's family life, because not only do investigators have to manage and navigate these murder cases, we have to manage and navigate our personal lives.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes they intersect.
Yes.
Especially when you're a homicide investigator.
Yeah. Well, you do a great job of that. Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
A unique aspect about that, kind of to touch on what Fred is saying, is especially for specifically for sheriff's homicide, is I'll drive all over the county, for various reasons, my personal life, work, or whatever. But I'll pass locations that are scenes of murders that I've had.
Yeah.
And it brings that up. And
Sure.
I remember the entire case. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a unique aspect there when you're running all over this county, and
I can imagine. And now there's just people driving by and kids playing and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. Mark, you have anything you want to add to that?
Both Fred and Marty touched on it, and Marty just touched on driving by. I live in the city of Long Beach still, and I worked here.
Wow.
And I've been here over 40 years. So I moved out of mom's house. I moved to Long Beach. So not only do I drive by locations, but I live in areas where I've solved cases. So both in gangs and in homicide. But one of the things that Fred covered in the book that I want a lot of the law enforcement people to see is that we all had some type of coping mechanism. to deal with this job. And for me, it was riding my bike, my Gold Wing, or whatever motorcycle I had at the time. I play music.
Mhm.
You know, I still can play. I can still work if you need a drummer. As long as the drums are there. I'm not packing up my shit and taking it.
Good for you. Good for you.
But,
That's great. Yeah.
You know, but you have to have something to do outside of your job. And the way my father raised his boys is to go to work, leave that shit at work, come home, deal with your family life.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to do. I didn't bring a lot of my stuff home. But like Fred said, I do think about cases, some of the cases that I didn't solve that I could have, or something happened where that case should have been solved, but some kind of interference. That does occur. But I'm speaking to the cops out there, the people in law enforcement, the dispatchers, the forensic people, anybody that works in this business, have a coping mechanism. Do something fun, get a hobby, take your mind away from it. You know, oftentimes I'd get blocked in a case or hit a wall. I would drop all that shit. I go get on the bike, or I go in my drum room and just play for 2 hours or whatever, just to clear my head and then get back. So, and then when I go back fresh. So have a coping mechanism, because this is not the only thing that we do. You know, there are other parts to us.
Right.
And I want people to understand that, I came from the music business and I still delve in that every now and then. And that's one of my coping mechanisms, as well as I ride a Gold Wing all across the world, all across the nation. So that would be my last part of adding to this conversation is, you know, the job is not you. It's what you do. It's not who you are.
Right. That's an important thing.
Last thing that I think is important, I just want to
sure, Marty. Yeah.
What's helped me, and I think many others, is maintain relationships with people. I mean, I did 17 years at this job. Like these gentlemen both said, it wears on you, man.
Yeah,
but
I bet.
If you can just leave it at and have relationships where people don't know anything about what you do, and you know, they don't know unless you talk about it, and not talk about it during those periods of times, and you know, we have conversations that have nothing to do with law enforcement. And I think that helped me, because like I said, I'm still around at 40 years, and you know, I feel good and still got clear eyes for the most part.
Good. God bless you, man. That's great.
You have to escape the echo chamber.
Yeah.
It's a good point, Marty. You have to, you got to get away from it.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, admire all three of you very much. Fred, wish you the best of the luck with the book. We'll do everything we can to promote it here. And thank you both, Marty and Mark. It's been great getting to know you, and I wish you all the best, man. It's a great story and a great book.
Thank you, Ralph.
Fred's new book, Saint Bloodbath, brilliantly describes the circumstances of the homeless encampment murders of 2008, the desperate lives lived by the various victims, the complex investigation by skilled, dedicated detectives, and the mentalities of the brutal drug gang killers. It's required reading for anyone who wants to better understand the culture of the marginalized that is currently growing throughout the United States, and especially in Southern California, and the significance of the homeless issue facing our country. With the subtlety and depth of understanding that only an experienced law enforcement professional like himself could bring, Fred explores the working relationships between homicide cops like Detective Mark McGuire and Captain Marty Rodriguez and their partners, and the myriad challenges they face both professionally and personally as they do their difficult jobs. We're honored to have had all three men with us today. Author Fred Reynolds, Detective Mark McGuire, and Captain Marty Rodriguez are today's heroes behind the headlines.
Heroes Behind Headlines. Executive producer Ralph Pizzullo. Produced and engineered by Mike Dawson. Orchestra and score provided by Extreme Music. Please comment, like, and subscribe to Heroes Behind Headlines.